welcome back to Prime Wealth. We're so glad you could join us today.
Absolutely. It's great to be here.
Budgeting can sometimes feel like an uphill battle, right? But what if I told you there's a way to take total control of your finances?
That's right. Today we're diving into the world of zero-based budgeting. It's a powerful tool that can really help you align your spending with your priorities.
We'll explore how this budgeting method works, why it's especially useful for people over 40, and how you can start implementing it right away.
We'll also share some practical tips and real-life examples to make it all relatable and actionable.
Exactly. Plus, we'll touch on some common pitfalls to watch out for so you don't feel overwhelmed.
And by the end, you'll have a clear understanding of how to create a budget that works for you, giving you that peace of mind and financial freedom.
So whether you're looking to rein in your spending or just want a fresh approach to managing your money, you're in the right place.
Let's get started and break it all down.
So Alex, why do you think mastering zero-based budgeting is especially important for folks over 40 right now?
Well, Jordan, as people hit their 40s and 50s, they often find themselves at a pivotal point in their financial lives. Retirement isn't that far down the road, and the decisions they make today can really impact their future.
Right, and given the economic climate we're in, it feels like a lot of people are feeling the squeeze.
Exactly. Inflation has been a real concern lately. Prices for everyday essentials like groceries and gas have skyrocketed. If you're not keeping a close eye on your spending, it can be easy to find your budget spiraling out of control.
Yeah, I hear that from friends all the time. They're worried about how to stretch their dollars. It's not just about saving for retirement anymore. It's about managing the here and now.
Precisely. And zero-based budgeting can be a game changer. It forces you to evaluate every single dollar you earn and allocate it intentionally, rather than just letting it flow out without thinking.
I can see how that would give people a sense of control. When you're looking at your finances, it's easy to feel overwhelmed, right? But zero-based budgeting breaks it down into smaller, manageable pieces.
Absolutely. And for people over 40, it's crucial to get comfortable with this kind of approach. You might have kids in college, aging parents to care for, or even just your own health costs rising. Each of these factors adds layers of complexity to your financial picture.
And let's not forget about the emotional side of money. When you feel like you're in control of your finances, it can really reduce anxiety.
You're spot on. A lot of people don't realize how much stress money can create, especially as they approach retirement. Studies show that financial stress can impact your mental health and overall quality of life.
I've read that having a budget can actually improve your mental well-being. When you know where your money's going, you can make more confident decisions.
Exactly. And for someone who's 40 and thinking about retirement the next 20 years, knowing how to budget effectively becomes even more critical. It's about building a solid foundation now, so you can have the freedom to retire comfortably later.
And it sounds like zero-based budgeting can help identify those areas where they might be overspending without even realizing it.
Right. Take, for example, someone who's been paying for a gym membership they never use. It's a recurring expense that can add up over time. With zero-based budgeting, you can pinpoint those unnecessary costs and redirect that money towards savings or paying down debt.
That's a great example. Plus, it encourages people to think about their values and priorities. What do they really want to spend money on?
Exactly. It's like a direct reflection of your personal goals. If travel is a priority, for instance, you can allocate funds specifically for that instead of letting discretionary spending eat into your savings.
And let's be honest, many people in their 40s and 50s are feeling that urge to enjoy life more. Maybe take those trips or invest in experiences rather than just material things.
Yes, and zero-based budgeting empowers them to do just that without feeling guilty. By giving every dollar a job, you're not just budgeting. You're prioritizing what truly matters to you.
It's almost like a roadmap for your life's journey, isn't it? You're not just tracking expenses. You're creating a path toward what you want.
Exactly. And with the recent economic trends like rising interest rates, having a clear picture of your finances can help you navigate tricky waters. You can adjust your budget based on what's happening in the economy, ensuring you're not caught off guard.
That adaptability is key, especially with unexpected expenses that can pop up.
Right. And let's face it, life can throw curveballs. Whether it's a medical emergency or a sudden home repair, having a flexible budget allows you to adapt without derailing your entire financial plan.
So this is about more than just numbers. It's about peace of mind, too.
Absolutely. When you have a system like zero-based budgeting in place, it can reduce anxiety around money. You feel empowered, knowing that you're making conscious choices every step of the way.
And for people who've been hesitant about budgeting, starting with zero-based budgeting might seem daunting, but can actually be quite liberating.
Yes, and it's really about taking small steps. Anyone can start with just 1 month of tracking their income and expenses, and then allocate every dollar accordingly.
That makes it sound doable. It's not about perfection. It's about progress.
Exactly. And for those who might have struggled with budgeting in the past, zero-based budgeting can feel refreshing because it's not just about restricting yourself. It's about freedom and control.
So it's really about creating a budget that aligns with your life stage and goals.
Exactly. And if you're in your 40s and thinking about retirement or managing family expenses, mastering this budgeting technique can make a huge difference.
I love that. It's such a proactive approach to take charge of your financial future.
Yes, and it sets the stage for a more secure and fulfilling retirement. So now that we understand why zero-based budgeting is such a powerful tool, let's dive into some core strategies to implement it effectively.
So Alex, let's dive into the core strategies for mastering zero-based budgeting. I think a lot of people want that practical advice. Where do we even start?
Absolutely, Jordan. The first step is really understanding the concept of zero-based budgeting itself. It's about making sure that every dollar you earn gets assigned a specific purpose. So at the end of the month, your income minus your expenses equals zero. It sounds a bit tricky at first, but once you get the hang of it, it's really empowering.
Right. So how do we actually break that down? What's the first thing someone should do when they want to start?
The first thing is to track your income and expenses. You need to know exactly how much money is coming in each month and how much is going out. A lot of people underestimate their expenses, so getting that clear picture is crucial.
That makes sense. Would you recommend any specific tools or apps for tracking?
Definitely. There are several great budgeting apps out there. Apps like Mint or YNAB, You Need a Budget, are popular for this purpose. They can sync with your bank accounts and help you categorize your spending. If you prefer something simpler, a good old spreadsheet works too.
I love that. So once you have your income and expenses tracked, what's next?
After you have that information, the next step is to categorize your expenses. You want to break them down into fixed expenses, like your mortgage or rent, utilities, and variable expenses like groceries and entertainment. This will help you see where you can make adjustments.
Got it. So when you categorize your expenses, how do you decide what to cut back on?
Well, this is where it gets interesting. You should look at your variable expenses first. Take a hard look at what you're spending on things like dining out or subscriptions. Ask yourself, is this really adding value to my life? If not, consider reducing those expenses.
I think a lot of people might be surprised at how much they spend on those little things that add up over time.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of zero-based budgeting. It forces you to be intentional with your spending. Once you've categorized everything, you can allocate your income to cover all your expenses, and ideally put something aside for savings or debt repayment.
So let's say I've tracked my expenses, categorized them, and identified some areas to cut back. What do I do with that information now?
Now you'll create a budget. Start by assigning every dollar you earn to a specific category. Your budget might look something like this. If you earn $5,000 a month, you could allocate $1, $500 for housing, $300 for groceries, $200 for entertainment, and so on until you reach that zero balance.
That sounds pretty straightforward. But what if your income varies from month to month?
Great question. If your income fluctuates, then you can use an average of your income over the past few months to create a baseline budget. Just be conservative in your estimates and always prioritize essential expenses first.
And what about things like unexpected expenses or emergencies? How do you handle those in a zero-based budget?
That's where having an emergency fund becomes really important. Aim to set aside a portion of your income each month into an emergency fund. Ideally, you want to have 3 to 6 months worth of expenses saved up. This way, if an unexpected expense comes up, you can cover it without derailing your entire budget.
Sounds like a solid safety net. So once I have my budget set, how do I stick to it?
Good question. The key is to regularly review and adjust your budget. At the end of each month, look back at your actual spending versus your budgeted amounts. If you find you overspent in a category, don't panic. Just adjust your budget for the next month to account for it.
It sounds like consistency is key here. Are there any specific habits you'd recommend to make zero-based budgeting easier?
Absolutely. One habit I find really effective is to do a weekly review. Set aside a little time each week to check in on your spending. It keeps you accountable and helps you catch any overspending before it becomes a bigger issue.
That's a great tip. What about the mindset? How can someone shift their perspective to see zero-based budgeting as a positive thing instead of a restriction?
I think it's all about focusing on your goals. Instead of viewing budgeting as limiting, think of it as a tool that gives you control over your finances. When you know where your money is going, you can make choices that align with your values and long-term goals.
I love that. And it sounds like it can really help with financial stress too.
Definitely. When you have a clear budget and an understanding of your finances, it can alleviate a lot of that stress. You feel more empowered and in control of your financial future.
So once you've gotten into the groove with zero-based budgeting, are there any common pitfalls to watch out for?
Absolutely, there are several. One common pitfall is not being realistic with your budget. If you under-budget for certain categories, you'll find yourself feeling frustrated and defeated.
Right, and I imagine that could lead to abandoning the whole budgeting process altogether.
Exactly. Another pitfall is failing to account for irregular expenses, like annual fees or car maintenance. If you don't plan for those, they can really throw you off.
It sounds like preparation is crucial. What other mistakes might people make?
Well, one more is not adjusting the budget as life changes. Major life events, like a new job, moving, or having kids, can affect your finances. It's important to revisit and adjust your budget to reflect those changes.
That's really helpful advice. So, with these strategies and pitfalls in mind, what are some immediate steps someone can take to get started with zero-based budgeting?
Start by tracking your income and expenses for at least a month, categorize them, and then draft your first zero-based budget. Use one of those budgeting tools or apps to help keep you organized.
That sounds doable.
Once you've drafted that budget, stick to it, review it regularly, and remember to adjust as necessary.
Great! I feel like that gives listeners a solid foundation to build on.
It certainly does.
Now, let's transition into discussing those common pitfalls we just touched on. So, Alex, let's dive into some of the common pitfalls people face when trying to master zero-based budgeting. I mean, it sounds so straightforward, but I know it can trip people up.
Absolutely, Jordan. One of the biggest mistakes I see is underestimating expenses. People often forget about irregular expenses, like car maintenance, annual subscriptions, or even holiday spending. They're so focused on their monthly bills that they overlook these costs.
Right, and then they're caught off guard when those expenses come up. It can really throw a wrench in their whole budget.
Exactly. I had a client once who, despite having a solid income, found himself in trouble because he didn't account for his car insurance renewal. It was a hefty bill, and he ended up having to scramble to find extra funds to cover it.
That sounds stressful. So what's a good way to avoid that?
A simple method is to create an irregular expenses category in your budget. You can estimate these costs based on past spending and set aside a little each month. This way, you're not hit with a surprise.
That makes sense. Are there other common mistakes people make?
For sure. Another one is failing to adjust the budget when life changes. Events like a job change, a move, or even an unexpected medical expense can shift your financial landscape dramatically.
Oh, totally. I think sometimes people feel like once they set a budget, it's set in stone.
Right, and that's a recipe for disaster. I had another client who lost her job but didn't adjust her budget accordingly. She kept spending at her previous level, thinking things would just go back to normal. It didn't end well.
Wow. That really highlights the importance of flexibility in budgeting. So how can someone keep their budget adaptable?
Regular reviews are key. I recommend sitting down once a month, going over your expenses, and adjusting your budget categories as needed. It's a good time to reflect on what's working and what isn't.
Definitely a proactive approach. Speaking of which, what about emotional spending? I know that can be a big hurdle for many people.
Yes, emotional spending is a huge issue. Many people use shopping as a way to cope with stress or boredom. They might stick to their budget most of the time, but then have these moments where they overspend to feel better.
I can see how that would happen. It's almost like a little escape, right?
Exactly. But it's important to recognize those patterns. I've worked with clients who kept a journal of their spending habits, noting when they felt the urge to splurge. It helped them identify triggers and find healthier coping mechanisms.
That's a great idea. So instead of just tracking dollars, they're tracking feelings too?
Yes, and it's really eye-opening. Once they see how often emotions play into their spending, they can make more conscious decisions.
Are there any other things to watch out for?
Absolutely. Another common pitfall is not being realistic about lifestyle choices. Sometimes people create budgets that are too strict or unrealistic. They might cut back on essentials or things that bring them joy, thinking it's the only way to save.
Oh, that can be tough. Like, if someone loves dining out, but they go too extreme with cutting that out, it can lead to burnout and resentment.
Exactly. It's about finding a balance. You can still enjoy those things while being mindful of your finances. Maybe they can set a smaller dining out budget or find more affordable ways to enjoy meals out.
That sounds much more sustainable. It's all about moderation, right?
Yes, and it's also about understanding your values. If dining out is important to you, then prioritize it within your budget instead of eliminating it entirely.
That's such a good point. What about when people just give up on budgeting altogether? Is that common?
Definitely. Many people feel overwhelmed by the process and think, I just can't stick to this. But usually, it's not that they can't budget. It's that they haven't found a system that works for them.
So it's really about finding the right fit?
Exactly. It could be adjusting the zero-based budgeting approach to be more fluid, or trying out another budgeting method altogether. The important thing is to keep at it and not throw in the towel.
That's super encouraging. I think people often feel defeated if they slip up once or twice.
Absolutely. Everyone has setbacks. What matters is how you respond to them. If you find yourself off track, take a step back, analyze what went wrong, and adjust your plan.
Do you have any specific danger signs people should look out for?
Yes. One major sign is if you're consistently dipping into savings to cover expenses. If that becomes a regular habit, it's a clear indicator that your budget needs some serious reevaluation.
That's a big red flag. What about if someone feels constantly anxious about money?
That's another warning sign. If budgeting feels like a burden instead of a tool for empowerment, it might be time to rethink your approach.
So it's about creating a system that not only works, but also feels good, right?
Exactly. And once you find that rhythm, budgeting can actually give you peace of mind, knowing you're in control of your finances.
It sounds like it's really about building good habits and keeping an eye out for any warning signs.
For sure. And if you notice those signs, don't hesitate to take a step back or even reach out for help. Sometimes a fresh perspective can make all the difference.
So now that we've talked about the pitfalls and the lessons learned, what are some immediate steps people can take to recover if they find themselves in a budgeting rut?
Well, first, take a deep breath and assess your current situation. Then, set aside some time to review your budget. Look for areas where you might be overspending or where you can adjust.
That's a solid start.
Next, consider recalibrating your budget categories to better reflect your current lifestyle and needs. It could be that your priorities have shifted, and that's okay.
Definitely. And keeping things flexible is so important.
Exactly. And finally, commit to a regular check-in schedule, whether it's monthly or quarterly, to ensure you're staying on track and adapting as needed.
So those are some immediate steps you can take. Now let's bring everything together. So Alex, now that we've covered the essentials of zero-based budgeting, what are some immediate actions our listeners can take to start implementing this?
Well, the first step is really to get a clear picture of your current finances. I suggest you start by tracking your income and expenses for at least a month. Just jot down everything you earn and spend. It can be eye-opening to see where your money is actually going.
Right. Sometimes we think we know, but then reality hits. What tools or apps can help with that?
There are quite a few options out there. You could try apps like YNAB, You Need a Budget, or Mint. They make tracking income and expenses pretty straightforward. YNAB, in particular, is great for zero-based budgeting because it encourages you to assign every dollar a job.
And I imagine that can help eliminate those surprise expenses.
Exactly. Another great tool is a simple spreadsheet. If you're more of a DIY person, creating your own budgeting spreadsheet in Excel or Google Sheets can be very effective. Just set up columns for income, expenses, and your budgeted amounts. It gives you that visual breakdown.
I love that. It can feel more personal when you create it yourself. What about the actual budgeting process? How do we start?
Well, once you have that data, you can begin to categorize your expenses. Break them down into fixed costs like rent or mortgage, and variable costs like groceries or entertainment. You want to see where you can cut back, which is a big part of zero-based budgeting.
So it's not just about tracking. It's about analyzing too.
Absolutely. After you categorize, you can start setting your budget for the next month. This is where the zero-based part comes in. You'll want to allocate your income to cover all your expenses and ideally have zero left over. If you have extra, you can decide whether to save, invest, or pay down debt.
Speaking of debt, how does zero-based budgeting play into that?
Great question. If you have debt, it's crucial to factor that into your budget. You might allocate a specific amount each month to pay it down. With zero-based budgeting, every dollar is accounted for, so you can make sure you're prioritizing your debt repayment.
And that helps you stay focused and motivated, right? Knowing exactly where your money's going every month?
Yes, it does. And it's also about building habits. You want to check in on your budget regularly, maybe once a week, to see how you're doing against your plan. Adjustments are okay. Life happens, and being flexible is important.
That's a good point. It's not a set it and forget it kind of approach. What about building those budgeting habits? Any tips?
Sure. Start small. If weekly check-ins feel overwhelming, maybe do bi-weekly or even monthly at first. Just get into the routine of reviewing your budget and your expenses. Over time, you'll find what works best for you.
And I suppose celebrating small victories could help keep the motivation up, right?
Exactly. If you manage to stick to your budget for a month, treat yourself to something small but meaningful. It reinforces the positive behavior. Plus, even just recognizing your progress can be a great motivator.
That makes sense. What if someone feels overwhelmed by the idea of budgeting or thinks they're not good with money?
It's completely normal to feel that way. Remember, budgeting is a skill, and like any skill, it takes practice. Don't be too hard on yourself if you slip up or if it feels challenging at first. Just keep learning and adjusting as you go along.
So it's about progress, not perfection.
Exactly. And speaking of learning, there are some great books on budgeting. Your Money or Your Life by Vicki Robin is a classic that dives deep into mindset and budgeting. The Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey is another good one, especially if you're looking for a step-by-step approach.
Those sound like great resources. Are there any online courses or workshops you'd recommend?
Yes, YNAB offers workshops that are really helpful for beginners. They cover the fundamentals of budgeting and offer tips on how to stick to your plan. Plus, there are community forums where you can share experiences and learn from others.
That community aspect seems really valuable, especially when starting out.
Absolutely. Connecting with others who are on the same journey can provide support and accountability, which is so important.
And what about the long term? How can listeners maintain their budgeting habits as life changes?
Life will always throw curveballs, so it's important to revisit your budget regularly, at least once a year, or whenever there's a significant change in your income or expenses. You may need to adjust your categories or reassess your goals.
Makes sense. It sounds like a dynamic process rather than a static one.
Exactly. And as you get more comfortable, you might even want to explore advanced budgeting techniques or investment strategies. But starting with zero-based budgeting gives you a strong foundation.
So those are some immediate steps you can take. Now let's bring everything together. Wow, what a journey we've had today. Mastering zero-based budgeting really gives you, this incredible sense of control over your finances, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's all about making every dollar work for you. One key takeaway is that by assigning every dollar a job, you can really prioritize your spending and savings. It's empowering.
Right? And I loved when we discussed how it helps you anticipate expenses. That's so crucial, especially for listeners over 40 who want to prepare for retirement or big life changes.
For sure. And another point is, the flexibility that zero-based budgeting offers. If your expenses change from month to month, you can easily adjust. It's not a rigid plan. It's a living document.
Exactly. And we can't forget the importance of tracking your progress. Regularly reviewing your budget keeps you accountable and helps you celebrate those small wins along the way.
Yes, celebrating small wins can keep your motivation high. And don't underestimate the impact of having a clear financial picture. It can reduce stress and give you peace of mind.
It really does feel good to take control, doesn't it? So for anyone looking to adopt this method, remember to start small, be patient with yourself, and adjust as needed.
And share your journey with someone you trust, It helps keep you motivated and accountable.
Definitely. And if you enjoyed today's insights, please like, subscribe, or comment with your thoughts. And if you know someone over 40 who could benefit from this, share it with them.
Next time, we're diving into how to budget for a regular income, especially for freelancers. That's going to be super relevant for many of our listeners.
I can't wait for that. It's such an important topic.
All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us today.
We'll see you next time.